Well, let's see how this works. I don't have a microphone plugged in, but we'll see what's going on here. Hey, everybody, get in here. You should have a little bit worse connection. All right, that's better. All right, I'm just using my phone. Let me tell you what weird problem I'm having technically. This is the same problem I had the last couple of days. The problem is that Siri keeps popping up on my screen and cutting it off. So I'm not going to say that word again, but SIRI on 2 different iPads was coming up on its own every 10 seconds. Now, if that had happened on one iPad, I would say to myself, there is something wrong with this iPad. But I just changed out the one that was problematic, and the second one adopted exactly the same problem. Has anybody had a problem with SIRI popping up on their screen and taking over the screen, and it just continues to do it? And by the way, on the second device, it was completely turned off. So SIRI, I turned off, and then there was no audio. So I don't know what that was all about, but it's not good. Anyway, I was talking about racist Google, and maybe that's why I got cut off. If I get cut off again, you'll know there's something going on. This is my 3rd device using different mechanisms. All right. So racist Google continues to show only negative articles toward the top of the search, so I've moved to DuckDuckGo. You would be kind of crazy not to do the same at this point, because they have targeted me for opinion. So in terms of whether they should be, at this point, the question of whether Google should be regulated, I believe, is settled. Because even if you imagined that the algorithm is doing this and nobody is actually making any decisions, it would be the weirdest coincidence in the world, but let's say it's possible. Even then, you still need to regulate, because the public needs confidence in these platforms, and obviously the circumstances give none of us any confidence in them. So the fact that no matter what they're actually doing, the fact that they can't be trusted as public platforms means they have to be regulated. So regulate Google. Regulate the hell out of them. All right. Let's talk about Mattis. I was saying that if you work in a big company, there's an experience which you've had that people who have not worked in big companies probably have never had. And it goes like this. Somebody very important quits or gets fired. Could be a CEO, could be the top engineer, could be somebody like that. And what does everybody say? Everybody says, oh no, it's the end of the world. And this is our most important employee. And with that person gone, everything's going to go to hell. Exactly what they said with General Mattis. But everybody who's worked at a big company knows what I'm going to say right now to the rest of you. Nobody's irreplaceable. What are the odds that the United States, with the best military in the history of humanity, with the most well-trained and capable generals and leaders, what are the odds that the person who replaces Mattis, what are the odds that that person isn't pretty darn good? Don't you think that whoever would replace Mattis isn't going to be sucky? Do we think that we only had one good general? And let me ask you this. Mattis gets a lot of credit for mopping things up in Syria. If I made you in charge of the U.S. military, do you think you could have cleaned up Syria? I believe you could, with no general experience whatsoever. Given that the U.S. military is so dominant, I'm pretty sure you would have won every war. So the first thing I would ask you is to stop believing that Mattis was magic. He was probably very good at his job. He wasn't the best ever, meaning that there are probably other generals that are just as good or better. And we'll get another one. So, are you still having audio problems? I see some people are saying they're getting audio problems. Yes, allow us to have a renewed simultaneous sip. Grab your mug, grab your stein, your tankard, your cup, and join me. All right, just for fun, because I know that a lot of you are Trump supporters, I'm going to paint a picture of how successful President Trump is or soon could be. And let's concentrate on soon could be. If everything goes just sort of the way you think it should go in life, in 2 years, at the end of the first Trump term, here's what might be true. And I would argue, probably. Number one, he may have appointed 3 or 4 conservative judges, which would make him, if he did nothing else, would make him the most consequential president, in modern era, I would say. So if he did nothing else, that would be amazing. But President Trump has an interesting opportunity here, and I'm going to predict that he might actually do this. Well, that's not much of a prediction if I say might. I'm going to go on record in saying that by the end of Trump's term, this will be my actual prediction. By the end of his term, he will have ended 5 wars. So that's my prediction, that at the end of Trump's first term, the first term, not the second term, he will have ended 5 wars. He will end our war in Syria. Now, that doesn't end the Syrian struggles, but it would end our struggle. He's probably going to get us out of Afghanistan. That's 2. North Korea, we've been technically at a state of war and had, real risk. That seems to be gone. 3. Have you been following the news about Yemen? Yemen's been at war with the proxy fight between Saudi Arabia and Iran. But turns out that they just negotiated a ceasefire. Who do you think was pushing that? Number 4. Number 5 is the wild card. It looks to me like Jared Kushner and the president is trying to pull together a grand deal that requires both Turkey and Saudi Arabia to be in on the plan, to put some pressure on Iran. And it looks like in the next 2 years, the Middle East will be completely redesigned in terms of its political and alliances, and that the Middle East will be close to something like the first major peace. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be any terrorism, right? There'll still be terrorism. But we could see the Arab countries at peace with Israel. We could see Iran so surrounded by basically everybody that they just say, all right, we'll play nice for a while anyway. So there is a non-zero chance, and in fact, I'm going to predict it. At the end of Trump's first term, he will have ended 5 wars and appointed 3 to 4 judges to the Supreme Court. The news today is that the number of job openings in this country is greater than the total number of people looking for work. Think about that. The number of job openings is greater than all the people looking for work. So his economy might be the most successful of all time. Now, I will grant you, and I've said this from the beginning, that you can't say Obama had nothing to do with the economy. You know, obviously it's a sort of a team sport. But the president will have solid grades for the economy. Healthcare is sort of a wild card. You think the president could do more. I think he could do more as well. But it looks like they're doing a lot in terms of getting rid of regulations that were unproductive. And if the president succeeds in just getting rid of, let's say, cross-state regulations and other anti-competitive stuff, could make a difference. Let's take immigration. In 2 years, it will be increasingly clear that immigration is a gigantic problem for Europe, even bigger than it has been, possibly to the point of you would never invest in Europe again. Let me say that again. In 2 years, there's a good chance that if you're an investor and you're looking at where to put your money in what part of the world, you might not invest in Europe because of the immigration problems that are happening there and the instability. But whether or not President Trump gets something that looks like a wall, wouldn't you agree that he will be the toughest on immigration compared to other countries? Maybe not Hungary, but most other countries. And that probably will go a long way toward keeping the United States, strong and stable. He's not going to get credit for that while he's in office. After Trump leaves office, when it's no longer about him personally, the day he leaves, the whole racism thing will just sort of go away. Because people are going to say, yeah, we were really worried that he would do a bunch of racist stuff. But it's been 4 years or 8 years, whatever he decides to, however long he decides to stay around. People are going to say, yeah, but I have to admit, nothing really happened except prison reform. So the person that they worried the most about being a racist will probably be the person who did the most in terms of race in the past, 10 years, 12 years. So it's entirely possible that in the next 2 years, President Trump will be considered the top president of all time. Now, there's a little bit of cheating going on when I say that, because you might say, no, how can you put him against, you can't possibly compare him to, George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. But they were slave owners. I'm pretty sure I can compare anybody to a slave owner, and they come out looking pretty good, as long as they're not also slave owners. So there will be an argument. Yeah, Lincoln's a little complicated, but he was definitely racist. So even though, we celebrate Lincoln for freeing slaves, it's a little more complicated than that if you look at the detailed history. So I think Lincoln's a little bit racist. And the weird thing is that if you look at accomplishment, Trump will be near the top, and he will be the least racist president who's in the top 5. Because if you think about it, if you were going to say, all right, here's my top 5, you'd throw Truman in there, and you start throwing Roosevelt in there and stuff. But you start looking into their histories, and you would find that every one of those other presidents that you put in the top 5 was way more racist than anything that Trump has ever even been blamed for. Not even close. So it's a weird situation. He might be 2 years away from being the top-rated president of all time. Will he ever get credit for it? Nah, I don't think so. Let's see what else we got going. There's a report that Turkey has sent some of their better troops across the border as if they are getting ready to attack the Kurds. But we also know that President Trump had a long conversation with Erdogan in Turkey and had offered that if Turkey, plays nice, which I assume means not killing the Kurds in Syria, that we could have a lot more trade with Turkey, and things could be good for Turkey. So, like you, I'm concerned that Turkey will not be an honest player in this and may attack the Kurds and kill our allies, and that would be a catastrophe. I would be on the side of people who blamed Trump if our allies get wiped out. But it does seem that they're doing the right stuff to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I suspect that a lot of work will be done to protect the Kurds, but there are no guarantees in life. All right. Unlike me, you don't care about investors. Who is saying that? Will Trump fire the Fed? So we have conflicting reports about whether Trump had floated the idea or not about firing the Fed chief, whose name I don't even know. Now, Mnuchin says that did not happen, that was not discussed. Other reports say it was. But here's the interesting thing. His name is Powell, the Fed chief. Here's the interesting thing. Trump always gets a lot of mileage out of the rumor he might fire somebody because it puts pressure on him. So even though the Fed chief is independent-ish, and even if the Fed chief is saying, no, principle is more important, I'm going to do what I think is right, he is also human. And as a human being, there's a good chance, as a human being, people are influenced by stuff such as the threat of risks and gossip and rumors and all that. So the president may have persuaded the Fed through this rumor. If you ask them, they'd say, no, we are not persuaded at all. We're going to do what we were going to do. But humans are humans. They can be persuaded. People are asking me if I got married. No, I don't know why you're asking me that. Will Rand, oh yeah, if you haven't been seeing Rand Paul's Twitter for the last, day or two, it's turned hilarious to the point where people are asking who is it who's writing his Twitter because it's so funny. So Rand Paul has taken to tweeting like the president. So he's doing his tweets in the style of President Trump. They're funny and they're provocative and they go further than you think they should go. And they're actually really well done. So you should see his latest tweet threads. They're extensive and they're all hilarious. Yes, and Trump legalized industrial hemp. I still don't know how important that is. I understand that there was no reason for hemp to be illegal in the first place. But somebody's asking me, what was it like to work with Larry Charles? If you don't know Larry Charles, he was my co-executive producer. He's a director. He was one of the early writers on Seinfeld. He was a showrunner for the show, I can't remember. And he was also worked on the Dilbert TV show. Somebody asked me, what is it like to work with him? And the answer is great. He's one of my favorite people in the world. Yeah, Larry Charles is sort of like a national treasure. Pretty much everybody who knows him says the same thing. He's just great. He also directed Curb Your Enthusiasm, a number of episodes as well, yes. He also was, he was the director for, was it Borat? I think it was Borat he directed. Can my girlfriend go live? Well, you're talking about Christina. Check out her Instagram page. Just search for Christina with a K, Basham, B as in boy, A-S-H-A-M, and you'll see her playing some piano Christmas favorites. She's got some more coming. Christina should be able to play a little Christmas concert for us. Well, she should. I think she likes recorded better than live, though. Why is getting high on weed considered a solution? Well, that's a very generic question. But I can tell you that my take on weed, by the way, most of you know that I am a proponent of medical marijuana and use it to great success in my own life. But I don't recommend it. Don't recommend it to kids. I don't recommend it recreationally. And I don't recommend it at all. If you don't have a doctor telling you to take it, don't do it. In my case, it's a godsend. It helps me on probably a dozen different things and essentially makes me, at age 61, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. And weed is probably at least a third of the reason for that. Two ER doctors told you to smoke it. Well, and again, it depends entirely upon your specific medical situation. It is not recommended for all people. And by the way, I don't use it as any kind of a party drug. I don't know why anybody would. It's the worst party drug ever. You know, if you don't use it for medical reasons, I don't really recommend it. I don't vape unless I'm somewhere where that makes sense. Does it help with allergies? Yeah. Yeah, it dries you out completely. So it helps with, and by the way, this is not medical advice. Don't take any medical advice from me. But for some people, and you might not be one of them, and if you smoke marijuana and have asthma, it might just kill you. So just know that. But for some people, since marijuana is a vasodilator, it does the same thing as some of your asthma meds. And when my asthma was the worst several years ago, the only thing that would knock it out was marijuana, and it would do it immediately. The regular drugs would get me about half of the way there, but it was the only thing that could give me full relief. Indica or sativa, somebody's asking. Depends on the time of day. They both have their purpose. One of them makes you tired, one of them makes you creative and productive, so you have to pick your time. What is my medical reason? I have a bunch of them. The primary reason is sleep apnea. So I have mild sleep apnea, and marijuana is just perfect. I sleep through the night. You know, I can typically get 4 hours of sleep a night, 6 on a good day, and I'm fine. That's all I need, because I sleep so well on marijuana. No, I don't use the CPAP. I don't have that much of a problem. But beyond that, it helps with my asthma, it helps with my allergies, it helps me exercise more, it helps me, mentally, it helps me creatively, it helps me blood pressure-wise. Yeah, there's a pretty long list. It basically helps you with everything. But, again, no two people have the same reaction to it, so there's no reason to think that it would work for you. So don't take any medical advice from me. Can edibles be as good? Edibles are worthless, and you should stay away from them. Everybody who you hear who has a problem with marijuana, like they do too much and they do something silly or they have a bad experience, it's all from edibles, because they can't gauge the amount they're getting. So edibles, I would say, for only the rarest situations would be acceptable. Yeah, and don't drive. I don't recommend driving. All right. Now, for those of you who don't like Patreon and would like to support me, I will say again what I said in more detail the other day. If you wanted to support these Periscopes, you could go to this URL, buy.wentoken.com, and buy the tokens that are associated with my startup, Interface by WenHub. And that would be the best way to support me. And here's the good part. If you buy those tokens, that money directly goes into my startup and replaces the money that I would have put in, so it's a direct benefit to me. But those tokens could become worth more if the startup succeeds and demand stays high. It's not an investment, but it is true that it's the one time you could donate to a creator and maybe come out ahead. The odds of coming out ahead on any kind of crypto are low, but we have a company that's up and running and customers coming on, and that's a uniquely advantageous system or situation. So if anybody, no, it's not an investment opportunity. You would never call cryptocurrency an investment. That would always be a mistake. Can you schedule buying when tokens like Patreon? No, we don't have a scheduled purchase, but you can buy them anytime you want. So it's easy to buy them within the app or without the app. Now, if you buy them at the URL that I gave you, in order to have those tokens, you need to download our app, which is free, called Interface by WenHub. If you search for that on the app stores, you'll find it. And if you use the same sign-on you did when you bought the tokens, which is important, use the same sign-on, your tokens will automatically appear in the app's internal wallet. And then you can use them in the app, so it becomes money you can use within the app. But also, someday you might trade it on an exchange if it goes up in value. Can you invest in Interface with stocks? Not at this time. The only way you can be part of it, part of the upside, is by owning the cryptocurrency, the WEN, as we call it, WHEN. Tell us how to change from Google. You want to search for DuckDuckGo, and then go to their page, and there'll be a button to tell you how to add the Chrome extension for DuckDuckGo. And basically, you just click a couple of buttons, and it takes over your browser. So your browser will search DuckDuckGo instead of Google. It's all very seamless. Takes about 10 seconds total. Yeah, I'm going to look into the Brave browser. I'm hearing good things about that, but I haven't looked into it yet. Why am I using Chrome? The trouble is there's a network effect with Chrome. It works on all of my devices, so every device I pick up, it's like I never left. If I had only one device, I suppose it'd be easy to change. Oh, thank you for buying some WEN tokens. I appreciate that. Now, I hear from my CTO, Nick, that there's a lot more activity on the Interface by WenHub app. A lot more calls are being connected because we added a scheduling feature. So now, instead of just finding somebody who happens to be online at the same time, who's your expert, you can schedule people. And apparently that's making a big difference in connections, as we imagined it would. Elon said boring bricks are 100% free for Blight Authority. I don't think he meant for Blight Authority, but yes, those free bricks would be great. I'll probably separately do a Periscope about some ideas for Blight Authority. I think you're going to like them. Some of them are fun, and they will really open up your mind. Armstrong Comics. Oh, Armstrong Economics, not comics. Um, Merry Christmas. All right. Is there anything else anybody wants to know? Did I throw a holiday party? I did not. It's a quiet year this year. Do you have an alternate power source in your home? Gas generator, etc. The house is designed to add a gas generator, but every time I think I'm going to get around to it, I don't follow through. So it's designed to have one. It doesn't have one. Will the shutdown last into the new year? Yeah, it'll definitely last into the new year because nobody's doing anything over Christmas. Have I ever killed anyone? Well, have I ever killed anyone? I've been accused of killing someone. I'll tell you that story. Years ago, I wrote a book called The Dilbert Future. I'm sorry, no, it was the Dilbert Principle. And in my book, there was a chapter about engineers. I think it was that book. Anyway, there was some fairly well-known professional author who took my entire chapter with no changes at all, put his name on it, and then published it for money. So, of course, people notified me. They said, hey, this is somebody just published under their own name an exact chapter from your book. So we contacted him, of course, and said, hey, you took my book, like in public, like right in front of the world. Here's my book. Here's the date of the book. It's obvious the book came before the article. You know, there's no question about the facts or what came first. And they're word for word. There's no difference. His defense was this. His defense was that we both stole it from the same source. Now, since I wrote it from scratch, I know the source. I remembered my thought process. I remembered even where I was when I wrote it, etc. And remember, it's not similar to something we both saw. It's exact wording, and how conveniently it's my exact words. No, he didn't cite me because he said that I stole it too. So his defense was, oh yeah, I did steal it, but I stole it from a meme that was just going around the internet, and you probably stole it from the same source. Now, there was a meme of this going around the internet, but it was after I wrote it. So he probably saw it without my name on it and said, hey, there's no name on this. I'll just slap my name on it and sell it. Anyway, so here's the bottom line. Somebody asked me if I've ever killed anybody. So, of course, we put some pressure on him about that. Lawyers contacted him, etc., as one does. And he died. So during the time we were putting some legal pressure on him, he died. He had a heart attack. And I was contacted by somebody who knew him well and said that I killed him because the stress of this situation put him over the edge, and he actually died because of the pressure I put on him. And now you might ask me, do you feel guilty that you may have killed this guy? To which I say, he stole from me. All I did was call him out for stealing. And there's no question about the facts, because, you know, you can see I wrote it. I know I wrote it. You might still be in doubt, but I don't have to wonder who wrote it because I wrote it. So to answer your question, I have been accused of killing somebody psychologically, meaning that my persuasion actually made their heart give out and they died. So I can't confirm that I killed anybody, but I was accused of it. Somebody said, I heard RGB stole from you. All right. I'm trying not to make any Ruth Bader Ginsburg jokes because it's certainly not funny that her health is failing. But there's something, okay, I'm just going to say it. There is something funny about how plucky she is. So I guess that's funny in a good way. So I'm not one of the people who is rooting for her to have a bad outcome. I'm not doing that at all. But given the types and number of problems she's had, from lung cancer to whatever else, and she's 85, you got to say, I have to admit, I've never respected her more than I do right now, because she's really hanging in there. So even President Trump compliments people on the other side when they're tough. She's tough. Give her that. You don't have to like her decisions, but let's say one thing we can agree on. She's tough. She's tough. So let's give her that and hope for the best. Somebody says, I think she still looks healthier than you. Probably true. All right. I think I've said enough. I'm going to go. I'll try to get my technology problems fixed. Might be my plug-in microphone is hinky, and that might be triggering the rest of the problems. This is the only device I didn't use my plug-in microphone, so that's probably the problem. And I will talk to you tomorrow.